my name's Mel, Dr. Mel Taitimu. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the neuroscience behind stress and anxiety and how you can use this knowledge in a really practical and meaningful way in your everyday life. There's a lot buzzing around about the neuroscience of stress and anxiety, and a huge amount of it can get quite complicated. And while we can understand it, we might not know how that translates individually into our everyday lives. So hopefully today I'll be able to simplify some of that for you. This is a part of a series with my colleagues around stress and anxiety, particularly targeted towards supporting people through this phase of social distancing changes and massive acute upheavals that are going on in people's lives in 2020. But it's applicable across the board, whether it's related to COVID-19 or relationship issues or anything personal that's going on in your life. The other modules that are being offered by my colleagues are around self-care, tapping through stress. Emotional freedom technique is a science and evidence-based technique around using strategies to calm the body in relation to stress and anxiety. There's a massive neurobiological basis behind tapping, so that's in one of the other modules. And then there's also one of my other colleagues talking about mindfulness and meditation. Now all of these link in together, so if you want to get onto our website at mypsychology.com.au, you will be able to have a look at what we all have to offer. So I'm going to go through with you what I usually just share with a client in a session. Basically, it depends on what a client's sharing with me, but the most common story is that people are just feeling wired all the time, that the stress and anxiety is leading to sleeplessness, it's leading to irritability, it might be leading to concentration difficulties, forgetfulness, low mood at times, feeling like there's too much on their plate and they're always playing catch up. So these are some of the common stories, and that stress and anxiety can have very physical symptoms as well. So, people start to feel tension in their bodies, they might start to feel queasy in their stomach, they might even start to get gut health issues. People can tend to, with the sleep disturbances, have really low energy but not be able to sleep. Exercise usually goes out the window too. So there's this constellation, and it can be really different depending on who the person is, of difficulties people experience around stress and anxiety. So the way I explain it to people, bear with me in my basic whiteboard explanation, is that there's a normal level of stress and anxiety in everybody's life. We live in a society and we live at a day and age where we are almost constantly stimulated, and our brains weren't necessarily designed for that level of stimulation. Our brains are still the exact same brains that we had way earlier on in our existence as Homo sapiens, and we weren't designed to have our brains switched on as much by everything that we have to deal with, the information overload, bills, work, kids' homework, being able to manage family relationships, being able to manage everything that's going on in our plate and still eat healthy and still exercise and still look after ourselves. So there's a huge amount going on, and we do have a natural normal level of stimulation in our bodies. So let's say this is stress and anxiety, and let's say this is just time. Now, in a healthy individual, you would be looking at stress and anxiety that goes up and down naturally. So you would be, in any given day or any given period of life, have higher levels of stress and anxiety, and then it would come down and it might go higher. Then you might hit those parts of life where you have a really stressful period of time It could be something going on with work, with a family member, a health issue, anything that just creates a lot more stimulation of stress and anxiety in your life. So you'd have spikes in your life that go up. And what you'd hope would happen is that that would eventually come back down so that you can start to function within what I call the therapeutic range. So what starts to happen for people is, let's say this is a healthy baseline and we oscillate above or below that baseline. We're barely ever down here where there's no stress or anxiety. It just isn't how we live our lives today. I don't see people in my room like that. I don't have friends like that. I'm not like that. But there's a healthy kind of therapeutic level of stimulation and stress and anxiety that goes on in our life. Now, if you start your day off here at baseline and you experience a few stress or anxiety related things in your day-to-day life, say for example homeschooling children, I'm homeschooling 2 of them at the moment. It might be something to do with work, it might be getting a task across the line, it might be talking to a family member and it's a difficult conversation, but anything that just gives us that level of stress and anxiety in our life. And then what can happen is we get to a certain level by the end of the day. Now what we need are day-to-day strategies that help bring that stress and anxiety level back down to baseline so that we start the next day back down here. If, which is very common, we don't get around to doing that and we start to do our next day like that, then we're just adding on top of that stress and anxiety. Maybe our sleep at night has helped us recalibrate somewhat, but sleep alone doesn't seem to cut it. 8 hours sleep is definitely a good foundation, but it doesn't seem to cut it to be the only way to recalibrate in the kinds of lives that we live today. So what starts to happen is if you're not recalibrating, if you're not doing this, then you're adding on top of the stress. And if this is how your life starts to look without strategic ways in which we can bring this back down, then we're getting into some trouble area. And that's when you start to get exposed to chronic stress or anxiety. Now, what happens here is that, let's say my pen's running out and I don't have a spare one. So we're going to try and make do. Let's say here is the threshold where all of us will start to experience burnout. So burnout is the result of chronic stress and anxiety that we've added on top of our daily stress so much and haven't recalibrated enough that that line, that baseline, is coming up consistently. Our nervous systems are so adaptive that what starts to happen is if that happens for sustained periods of time and we experience that chronic anxiety, which starts to look like burnout, our nervous systems recalibrate themselves. So your baseline, instead of being here, ends up somewhere up here. Now remember I called this area the therapeutic zone. If I see clients in this area, we don't need a huge amount of intervention for them to get back on track, for them to get back into whack and be able to live and feel more balanced in their everyday lives. However, if I see someone up here, the first session, and they're presenting like they're way up here, I call this the war zone. So their nervous system has been calibrated to think that it is in a war zone. Our nervous system does not understand, it hasn't got the memo, that we aren't in war. All it knows is that it's being constantly stimulated, that there's a sympathetic nervous system overload. Your sympathetic nervous system is one arm of your nervous system that is related to stress and anxiety. It's the switched on fight or flight part of our nervous system. So if that's constantly stimulated, our nervous system doesn't know that it's being stimulated by projects that we have to get done at work, or kids' issues at school, or that relationship issue that we're having with our partner. What it thinks, because it's evolutionary, in an evolutionary way, it's wired to do this, it thinks that we're under threat, that our very existence is under threat. And so we go into survival mode. And so that's why I call it war zone, because when your nervous system is calibrated up here, you wake up, as soon as you open your eyes, you're dodging bullets. It is like you are in a war zone. Your nervous system is designed to help you survive, and it thinks that you need to be on fire to survive. So for example, it is adaptive for a person living in the Gaza Strip to have their nervous system wired up here, because it is dangerous to walk out their door. So for them to get by every day, they need to be looking out for bullets. They need to be hyper-focused on where the next threat is and what's coming at them. Our bodies in our day-to-day lives, if they're wired like that, are starting to respond to our environment in the same way. It can see that next thing on our plate as that bullet, as that thing that's going to shoot us down, as that thing that we have to fight against or run from. So when someone comes in and sees me and they're here, I often describe to them, if you're waking up dodging bullets, if you have a look here and compare, you've only got about 2 things you can add to your plate before you hit threshold. And threshold, above threshold, that burnout threshold, is where you start to crack. You know, you get irritable, you can't sleep, you can't concentrate on that task, or you totally avoid that task. You start to have arguments with the people that you live with, or you withdraw from the people that you live with. You start to experience sleeplessness, all those typical symptoms of burnout. You can get compassion fatigue for the people that you work with, for the people that you live with. Things that you used to care about, you're not caring about as much anymore. Yourself and your self-care too goes out the window. So people are waking up at this point and they only have a really little wiggle room before they hit threshold. Whereas down here, if you recalibrate, if you bring your levels back down, you've got way more wiggle room in your day, in your week, before you hit threshold. Down here, you could have handled 15 things before you hit threshold. Up here, it's 1 or 2. And that's where I get that common comment from clients, I used to be able to handle this, I don't know why I can't now. Or I feel like I'm getting angry over spilt milk, or crying over spilt milk. I feel like I'm being more reactive than what I usually would be for this particular thing. So what I get clients to do, the way I try to work with clients, is we work out a strategic plan that brings this back down. Consistently, on a daily basis, recalibrating, not only with sleep, but with other parasympathetic activities. The parasympathetic part of your nervous system is your rest and digest. It's that arm of your nervous system that helps everything come back down again, that regulates your heart rate, that helps your food digest, that helps your liver and your kidneys work, that helps your frontal lobe to open up more so that you can see things more clearly, you can problem solve, you can concentrate, you can think more abstractly. When your sympathetic nervous system is on and you're under chronic stress or anxiety, your limbic system is on fire, the fight or flight center. And the limbic system will take over your brain. It will catastrophize things. It will see things as a threat. It will see things in a way that's negatively skewed because we're better off thinking more negatively when the limbic system's going off. Back when we lived in more remote tribal communal ways, if we went down to the waterhole and there was a saber-toothed tiger there, it might not kill us, but we're better off thinking that it will. We're better off thinking the most negative possible outcome because that helps with our survival. So when our limbic system is going off, thinking negatively, that's not something wrong with us. It's our limbic system doing exactly what it's supposed to do. We just don't want our limbic system on. We need to shut that thing down, or at least calm it down, open up our frontal lobe, and calm our whole system down by stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system regularly, having a program daily that helps this come back down. And then, when we're in the therapeutic zone, we can start to oscillate with stress and anxiety in a healthy way. Now, it's not easy, and some things that calm some people down don't calm other people down. You need to find your own unique parasympathetic plan. One thing I do say to clients, people who are at burnout area or war zone area up here, quite a few of them, as a way of reducing stress, do high intensity exercise. Now, that's great for your cardiorespiratory health. That is definitely good for mood improvement for that short period of time after exercise because you get that endorphin hit. But it's not great for sympathetic nervous system overload. It's not great for burnout because high intensity exercise actually stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. It puts your body under stress to work. So usually when people see me and they're way up here, I get them to stop that sympathetic work, those really high intensity workouts just for a period of time. And I usually get them on a much more soothing, down-regulated parasympathetic program that usually includes very good sleep. We need to treat sleep disorders if they're there, but just basic sleep hygiene, parasympathetic activities, walking, particularly in nature, breathing. Breath work is massive. The one way we have direct control over our nervous system is through our breath. If we slow our breathing down, if we learn how to train our breath, we directly impact upon our heart rate. Our heart rate then sends a message back to our brain that we're safe again and we're not facing that saber-toothed tiger, allows our frontal lobe to open up, and then we can see more clearly what's in front of us. So breath work, sleep, parasympathetic activities like yin yoga, yoga nidra, eating well, really grounded food, slowing down. It doesn't mean you have to be non-productive, but it does definitely mean when people are in burnout, something's got to change. And often it's how fast-paced we are in our life. But that's another talk. I just wanted to really give you a good explanation about why it's so important that we do these parasympathetic activities to get back down into that safer area where our nervous system is working more optimally. We can think more clearly. We can connect more with the people that we love, and we can also look after ourselves better. The next few modules from my colleagues, Beck, Ree, and Wendy, are going to share with you lots of strategies that will help that plan, your parasympathetic plan, to keep your stress and anxiety levels away from war zone and definitely not in burnout, keeping you in that healthy therapeutic zone of stress and anxiety. Thank you for listening. I hope it was helpful. It's a long drawn out presentation, I know. If you want to share any comments or have any questions, then please do ask and we'll do our best to respond.